a tank top on, so I'm not taking my jacket off. Nobody needs to see that.
Gotcha.
You got corn plant to do, or you don't do that?
We need more agendas.
I couldn't tell you.
That worked out pretty good. As long as they're going, so there's something to watch.
Who's this from? You guys?
Yeah.
It says revenue on the top?
Yeah.
Kelly handed it out
Oh,
this
did you?
morning. I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing.
I would assume it come from Ann. Well, from Ruth. From Ruth passed through from Ann to us. Pass-through document.
Oh, no. No. No, no. I'm gonna say way over here. Don't blame me a bit.
Everybody got the attachment for the general assistance.
Yeah, I do actually.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yep.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the York County Board of Commissioners meeting for April 5th. Would we please rise? Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, once again, welcome to everybody to the Board of Commissioners meeting for April 5th. Roll call, please.
Groats,
Present?
Holgren,
Present.
Wansberger, Sykes,
Present.
Meyer.
Present. Open meetings law is posted on the south side of our chambers. It is on our website. It is also posted on the wall outside of our chambers. Proof of publication was in the News Times, March 31st. It was also on our website. We need to review and approve the minutes of the March 22nd Board of Commissioner meeting.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Jack.
Second?
Daniel, any other discussion? Roll call.
Sykes,
Yes.
Groats,
Yes.
Holgren,
Yes.
Wansberger, Overmeyer.
Yes, we need to adopt today's agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we adopt the agenda of the York County Board of Commissioners for Tuesday, April 5th, 2022.
Thank you, Kurt
Second?
and Daniel. Any discussion? Roll call.
Holgren,
Yes.
Groats,
Yes.
Wansberger, Sykes,
Yes.
Overmeyer.
Yes. Okay, start off with officials forum. Anybody? I know there's a couple on the agenda, so I assume they're here to spec.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Harv.
Good morning, Harvey.
Just a quick update, we've been crack sealing the pavements. We're just about out of crack sealing material. The machines for doing the mastic down on Road 4 are available, so we are going to get them this week. And we will start mastic next week, working on Road 4, trying to get that smoothed out and sealed up. We'll close a mile at a time as we do that, so we can go and do the whole crack from one side to the other and just work down the mile. So we will close the miles as we're working on it each day. And people will just have to find a way around so we can get it done quicker. So, and I think that's kind of where we are at with everything right now. So we've been taken to do the crack sealing. We'll have to do the same thing with the mastic. We'll take the grader operators off of one side. They will work with the mastic crew for a week. Then we'll take them off the other side, do the same thing, and then we'll take them with the truck drivers off and that way it spreads the tar around to everyone. So that's kind of where we're at with the roads. So
Is that material hard to get a hold of? You said the crack sealing material we was running out of. Is it like everything else?
it's ordered.
Okay.
They said 2 weeks. This is the second week it hasn't showed up. But we have all the mastic stuff, because I bought that earlier.
Okay.
Because I knew what we had to do to Ford to save it going east. So I had purchased 2 semi-loads of that earlier on. And now that the machines are in, we can now get started on that. Hopefully by the time we're done with that, we have the crack seal so we can start working toward the north end of the county on the pavements up there. Them cracks are as big as your thumb this year. I mean, they're horrible. It's taken a lot of tar to fill them up. The downside is if we don't fill them up, it's gonna put a lot of water under our pavement, and that is not good.
Right.
So, because it will rain sometime.
Hopeful. You go ahead, Kurt.
We had purchased some, maybe 1 or 2 magnets to put on motor graders, is that
Yes.
correct? How many of those do we have?
We have 2.
2. Someone mentioned to me, a constituent mentioned to me, we have all these ARPA funds sitting there. Maybe it'd be a good idea to put those magnets on, outfit each motor grader with one of those magnets so that they can do that job. Would you be able to, when you're preparing your budget for the next fiscal year, include that item on there?
Yes?
Okay. I wasn't sure the installation, did we do that in-house?
Yes.
For those? Okay.
Yes, we did. We just bought the magnets, and then we purchased the iron and made our products to fit our machines.
Right, okay.
So
Yeah,
I'll
that just-
look and see what the cost is looking like.
Yeah, I didn't think they cost too much, but,
I wouldn't even say at this time, I've forgotten those numbers.
right, yeah. Pretty good, thank you.
All righty?
Anybody else? Thanks, Art.
You bet. Have a good one.
Any other officials this morning would like to visit? Okay, we'll move on to public forum. If anybody would like to speak at this time on something that is not on the agenda, they may do for a couple minutes, 2-3 minutes if they'd like. I would ask his name, please, for the record.
Yes, my name is James Jackson, Route 907 Road 2, Fairmont, Hayes Township. I wanted to speak to a few things. You know that the area I'm talking about is a part of the Upper Big Blue NRD, which is about 1 million. The Upper Big Blue, 1.5 million acres. Also, most of the soil types in that area are Hastings silt loams, and that is one of the best soils on the planet. The other thing I'd like to speak to is the aquifer under this area is really unique in the Upper Big Blue because it recharges. Not very many irrigation areas have that privilege. If you chart the rainfall and the groundwater level, I've forgotten how many wells the NRD checks every year in March or in the spring level. Water table just a few years ago was at least as high as it was when we started developing. We have a trigger level when it gets so far down, then we go to allocation. But anyway, then the other thing is, I just read in Farm Futures magazine in the last issue, 17% of the cropland in the United States is irrigated. 54% of the crop income comes from those irrigated acres. And I would assume that we should all be concerned with food security in this day and age. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else from the public would like to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on.
Dina
Was-
won't be down till later.
Okay, well, we do have a general assistance case. We will move that to the, to when our Dina shows up, I should say. So next up is review and approve payroll and vendor claims. You guys should have had those emailed to you.
What, there was a $10,830 claim in data processing.
Yeah, that was for maintenance agreement for,
Officer.
Lori, there you are, Lori, that was for the, yeah, that
Oh,
was
okay.
for the computer software.
Okay, yeah, just a big number, so it kind of stuck out there. Thank you.
I don't know that there was anything else that was surprising. We paid for the mower out of there. And then, of course, we had to make sure the 300 fund was okay. We had to do the transfers earlier this
Right.
month.
Yep.
So, and we're okay.
Good.
The fund sheet that was with is not accurate because that was put in there before the
Before the
treasurer.
transfer. Yep.
So, we're okay.
There was a, state institutions miscellaneous to Bryan Medical Center, is that what the, correction center?
I can't answer that one. Do you know?
Bryan Medical Center.
Yes.
It's under, 8022 state institutions.
Here's one, for how much is it?
$9,859.
Oh, here's that. Here it is. Was it coded out of, what's the first 0100, what, 6 what? Oh,
I think it was.
1700, 822. That's where I found it.
Okay.
This would have been from somebody that was EPC,
That's what I'm thinking.
so we won't give a name on that,
Yep.
but that was an EPC charge.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the payroll and vendor claims for April 5th as presented.
Thank you, Daniel.
Second?
Thank you, Kurt. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Gross,
Yes.
Holgren,
Yes.
Sykes,
Yes.
Osborne, Albemarle.
Yes. Okay, there's no funding transfers that we need. I will draw your attention a little bit to the juvenile diversion one. That one, because of the timing, this meeting being early on and payroll, that one does show a 776 shortfall, but that typically comes in the first or second week of the month, so we should be okay on that one. That's why that one is there, and there's no reason to transfer for a week or two, and then when that money should be coming in. Okay, discuss and act on approve the authorized board chair to sign hazardous material emergency response plan for York County. Gary is here with us today.
I have the paper you're supposed to sign. It's in my office. I
Okay.
forgot to bring it.
That's right.
Good morning.
Morning, Gary.
Hey, Gary.
We've always had a hazmat portion in our annex in our local emergency operations plan. But a new representative with the Nebraska Emergency Management Agency, and they always provide the template too. But there's certain things by state statute that need to be in a hazmat plan. So they provide us a new template that we need to add to the old one, which is a little more detailed in the hazmat response to an incident. So that's what we have now. And the LAPC, our Local Emergency Planning Committee, which deals with the hazmat materials end of things here in the county, they approved the plan at the last meeting. So
Okay.
then it needs board approval, and then it goes to the State Emergency Response Commission. And they sign off on it. They really don't approve. They may send it back and say you need some adjustments, but we did have an even representative our last LAPC meeting. She briefly looked through it. She thought it looked good, so we shouldn't have any problem there.
All 50-some pages.
Yep. Yep, there's 9 criteria. I don't know, can't list them all, but that it has to meet. And so I think
Okay.
we've met all those.
Okay.
But,
Anybody have any questions of Gary this morning? Obviously, it's something, and how often do we do this again? Is this
Well-
an annual or,
Yeah, we'll have to, it's a living document, so we can update it whenever we need to. You know, if
Okay.
we have additional hazard materials within the county. You know, we review the tier 2 forms that we get each year through the local emergency planning committee, but, you know, we'll review it more thoroughly every year. We have an
Okay.
annual meeting with our local emergency planning committee, which anybody can join.
right?
So if you're looking for another committee to be on, you're
Sure.
welcome to join. But we have an annual meeting and we'll review it then, we do the tier 2 forms at that time. And so we'll also do the plan at that time.
Okay. So we're looking for an authorization to sign.
So moved, authorize chairman to sign the. What's it called again?
Second?
Hazardous Material Emergency Response Plan.
Yes.
Mouthful.
Yes.
We have a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Holgren,
Yes.
Sykes.
Yes.
Salisbury. Crotts,
Yes.
Obermeyer.
Yes, and we'll get that, you can pick it up later.
Yep.
You know,
I'll get it.
you're in town.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Next up, we'll meet with the Summit Project Team, update and questions at this point in time. So I assume the team is in the front row, so if we just have your name and address so we know who we're speaking
You
to.
want us to sit up here? or-
That would, yeah, if you want to fit up here, that'd be great, so you can be by the mic so you can hear. And
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for having us. My name's Eric Skubanek. I'm the Director of Pipeline for Summit Carbon Solutions. And I'll let Chris and Derek introduce themselves as well.
You spell your last name, please.
Yeah, SCHOVANEC, and the first name is ERIK.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Chris Peterson. I'm with the government relations team for Summit Carbon Solutions, and it's PETERSON. And I live in Lincoln.
My name is Derek Montgomery. I'm on the non-environmental permitting team for Summit, and I'm from Houston, Texas.
Okay.
So, we just wanted to come here today. I know that, late last year that you were given an overview on the project. So we wanted to come back and, you know, we can give another brief overview and then just give an update on kind of where we're at. And then we also just wanted to be able to answer questions that you may have or the public may have. So, you know, as Chris, were you here when the presentation was given last year? So, as Chris gave the presentation, so what we're endeavoring to do is build essentially a large gathering system across 5 states. We're gonna capture CO2 from ethanol plants, pressure that up, and then transport that to North Dakota for permanent sequestration. And the reason for that, high level, is that, you know, over 50% of the corn crop in the states that we're touching, which is Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, and Minnesota, goes to ethanol production. So ethanol is extremely important, including in Nebraska. I think over $4 billion of the GDP in Nebraska is tied to ethanol. Thousands of jobs are tied to ethanol. So our project allows ethanol to compete in a low carbon world moving forward. And really the value proposition is that when we capture that CO2, and just high level, if you bring in 3 pounds of corn to an ethanol plant, you get 1 pound of ethanol, you get 1 pound of DDGs, and you get 1 pound of CO2 that goes to the atmosphere. So we're looking to capture that CO2. And when we do that, ethanol plants have something called a CI score, a carbon intensity score, and that's really what they're, you know, rated on as far as, you know, these carbon initiatives that are being pushed. The high CI score industrial facilities are the ones that are going to have targets on their back. There's going to be initiatives to hit certain target CI scores, and our project allows them to essentially cut that CI score in half. And when they do that, they can actually now sell that ethanol for a premium into the low carbon fuels market. It's a growing market. Right now it's on the West Coast and in Canada. The Midwest, there's, you know, 6 or 7 states that are proposing it here, and then there's 6 or 7 other states across the country that are likely to move into that market as well. So every point that you cut of your CI score, you can now sell that ethanol for about 1 cent per gallon more. And most plants were cutting that CI score about 30 points. So then now they can sell that ethanol for about 30 cents more per gallon, and then we share in that cost with them. So that's the main component of the revenue, and that's really the key driver. I mean, our parent company is Summit Agriculture. It's an agriculture company. You know, we understand the importance of corn and ethanol to the Midwest, and really that's the purpose of the project, is having ethanol being able to compete long-term in a low-carbon world, competing with ethanol or competing with electric vehicles. There's, you know, we see a pathway to where you can have a net carbon neutral ethanol by the end of the decade. And then, you know, ethanol then can compete. And again, you know, we see that it's very important to Nebraska and all the states that this project is touching. Just to give an update on the project, so the project team was stood up around June of last year. We started working on routing, we were working on survey permissions, and then we started working on our permits. You know, every state has different permitting processes. Nebraska is more of a county by county approach. Some of the other states have state permits that we filed for. So we filed for our IUB permit in Iowa end of January. We filed for our South Dakota PUC permit February 7th, and then we're going to be filing our North Dakota PSC Public Service Commission permit end of April. And then one of the other major permits that we're working on is with the Army Corps of Engineers, and we're hoping to have that filed June or July. So we've been working on permitting, we've been working on survey permissions, and then doing actual survey, which is civil survey, cultural surveys, and biological surveys, where, you know, these are requirements as part of our permits to go out there and do these surveys. And it lets us gain intelligence on the route, you know, from a constructability standpoint, from a biological and cultural standpoint, to make sure there's not, you know, artifacts or, you know, wetlands or anything like that. So we have to do those. And then we've also been working on our engineering design. We've been working on our, you know, procurement and getting, you know, geared up to order pipe. We're ordering all American pipe. We're paying a premium to do that. We're trying to order everything that we can in the U.S. And so one other thing that we've ramped up, and it's actually just expanding in Nebraska this month, is the right-of-way acquisition. So we were working in just kind of a select few counties near Iowa, and as we've been able to add agents and kind of staff up, we've been branching out, and we're now going to be working on right-of-way acquisition across the entire footprint of the project. So those are some of the things that we're working on. High level, the schedule, we're planning on starting construction in first quarter of 2023, and it's around a 1 year, you know, construction process. So we're aiming to be mechanically complete by mid 2024, and then by second to third quarter of 2024 being in service and operational after a few months of commissioning. So high level, that's the project and that's the update, and really just wanted to open it up for questions at this point.
Anybody have?
I have some basic questions.
Yes, sir?
When you first started, you said that the CO2 is captured from the atmosphere. Yeah, so it's in a gaseous form.
Yes, sir.
When you capture it and you're going to put it in a pipeline to move, what kind of form is it in there?
So it's in what they call a dense phase. So
Liquid, solid,
it's
gas?
got liquid and gaseous. It's a super critical state. So it's like a unique, it's got gaseous and liquid properties. So you pressure it up, then it compresses it. And then the reason for that is really so that you can move it in smaller pipes. If we were to move it in a low pressure gaseous state, we'd be having to put in very large diameter pipelines, you know, much more disturbance from a construction standpoint. So that's the purpose of pressuring it up.
Okay. When it's compressed in that state, is it lighter than air or heavier than air?
It's at that state, I believe it's heavier than air, and then whenever it goes to atmosphere, it would, go to atmospheric pressure again and go back to
And then it would rise, correct?
Yes,
So in a valley, when it first breaks loose, it's heavier than air. It displaces the air from that area, correct?
yes, for the immediate vicinity just around the pipeline.
Right.
If there was to be a release.
You can't breathe CO2, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it could be a hazard to people in that immediate area if you have a break, correct?
If you were directly over the pipeline, and there was a release, which, I can go through all the safety and integrity things that we're doing to make sure that that does not happen.
But all pipelines have a tendency they can break, correct?
There's hundreds of thousands of miles of pipeline in the US.
I understand that.
And there's very infrequent circumstances where there's a breach, and 99% of those are based off of somebody striking the pipeline, a third-party encroachment, a third-party strike. So that's why, for one, we're going deeper than what's federally required. The federal requirement is 3 foot of depth from the top of pipe to the top of soil. We're going 4 foot deep as a minimum, and we're willing to go deeper if there's, drain tile, if there's concerns about farming equipment sinking in and, impacting the pipe. We're agreeing to go 5 foot deep or whatever we need to just to make sure that it's a safe depth. We're gonna have, it's very highly rated carbon steel, anywhere from 0.2 inches to 0.75 inches thick. So it's very thick, high grade carbon steel. We fall under the federal government requirements of PHMSA. CO2 is non-combustible, it's non-flammable. So if there was a release or a strike on the pipeline, it's not gonna explode. It is an asphyxiant if it displaces all of the oxygen, like you mentioned, sir. But we're running dispersion analysis to understand what that looks like, and we're well within that process. But generally, it'll sit at the ground level for a brief period of time, and then it'll disperse as it, because it's going to be in the air. It's at high pressure, it goes to low pressure. It's going to become a gaseous state and essentially just dissipate into the atmosphere as it does right now. If you drive by an ethanol plant, you can see the stacks, just the fermentation stacks are just dumping the CO2 into the atmosphere right now. So it's just capturing that, putting it into the pipeline and moving it, which is currently just going to the atmosphere right now. I drove by the Poet plant just south of here, and I saw it happening today, as it is at every single ethanol plant.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
When you talk about, earlier you said the permanent sequestering, we're keeping it underground in like up in North Dakota.
Yes, sir.
I mean, has that been tested?
Yeah, so there's actually been over $1 billion spent by the Department of Energy on that type of sequestration research. It's very highly researched formations. There's downhole storage being completed now for saltwater injection, for natural gas, for all sorts of other products, including CO2, which is generally used for enhanced oil recovery right now, where they'll take the CO2, send it downhole into depleted wells, and it brings up more oil. We have no intention of doing that, and where our sequestration is taking place is nowhere near any oil reserves. So that is a question that we've gotten. We're just west of Bismarck is where our sequestration is planning to take place. And the reason that we're going all the way to North Dakota is because the geology there is highly researched, and it's highly viable to do sequestration there, and it is happening. So we essentially have to get pore space leases for 120,000 acres, and we basically buy the surface rights to inject downhole. We buy the surface rights from the landowner for the rights to inject below their surface. And it's actually going very well. I think we're up to 75% of leases already within just a few months in the area. And so what we're doing now is we have to do monitoring wells around the periphery of the pore space to understand what the geology looks like. And then we also are doing 3D seismic, which is kind of an ultrasound of the subsurface. So we're doing 3D seismic across the entire pore space. We're doing monitoring wells around the outside, and it'll tell us really what that geology looks like. And then what we're looking for is, there's really 3 formations in North Dakota. It's, I forgot the names of them. It's Enyakara, Deadwood, and something else. And they're anywhere from 1 to 2 miles below the surface. And what you'll see is there'll be very hard impermeable cap rock, and then below that there'll be very porous or permeable, siltstone or sandstone. And kind of the way I think about it is, if you stick a syringe into a sponge and you inject, there's cavities and there's voids that essentially can hold the CO2. And actually over time, the CO2 actually starts to solidify and crystallize. I'm not a geologic expert. We've got others on our team that, I'm over the pipeline. There is a guy that's over that sequestration. I know of it. But if you have any other questions on the sequestration, I can happily field those and get you a response on that. But the reason we're going to North Dakota, because it is highly researched there. There's been a lot of money spent on, and there's a lot of, it's a very, very rigorous permitting process as well. We have to work with the NDIC, North Dakota Industrial Commission, as well as the North Dakota Public Service Commission, the EPA, Army Corps of Engineers, all of these different entities that we have to work to get permits for. And we have to do these monitoring wells and test wells as well, so that we can understand what it looks like. And then once it goes into service, those monitoring wells will tell us, make sure that the plume is doing what it's supposed to be doing and staying in the area that it's supposed to be staying in. One of the other questions that we get is, well, how much storage is there? Is there enough storage? How long is that going to last? We've been, the research that's been done shows that there's actually 250 billion tons of storage in North Dakota alone. Our project right now has roughly 8.8 million tons of commitments. So it's thousands of years of storage. There's basically an indefinite amount of storage in North Dakota. So that's another reason why we're going up there. If the geology was good in Nebraska and Iowa and South Dakota for sequestration, then that's what we would be doing. It'd be, we could accomplish the same goal and not have to build a pipeline. There are other states that there is some sequestration happening at the actual site for ethanol plants. Like there's an ADM plant in Decatur, Illinois that is doing sequestration at their actual location. But it's just the geology does not allow for it here and in the footprint of our project. And so essentially these plants are going to be even more exposed from a risk standpoint and being able to compete if they don't do anything. Because the other plants where the geology is good, they can do that on site. They can lower their CI score, and the ones that can't do that are going to be exposed because they're going to have carbon intensity scores up here. Everyone else will be here, and then obviously as we move into the slow carbon world, then they're not going to be able to compete. And further, it's revenue for these plants to do the project. I mean, I mentioned there's the 30 cents a gallon roughly. A lot of these plants are 100 million gallon plants or more. That's $15 million a year of revenue that goes into their pockets that they currently don't have. The ethanol plants are putting up no money. They're putting up no capital. All the capture, we're calling it the capture, where we're going to capture the CO2. All of that's being funded by us and built by us, the pipeline and everything else. So we kind of see it as a no-brainer for the ethanol plants. They're getting their CI score cut in half. They're getting substantial amount of revenue. They've told us that allows them to debottleneck their facilities, expand their facilities, buy more corn, pay a higher premium for the corn. So we, and as many of you guys, as I mentioned earlier, over half of the corn in Nebraska goes to ethanol production. So if ethanol is not here long term, if there's not an end market for the corn prices are going to tank, and then land values are going to go down accordingly.
So if the ethanol plants have no cost in it, and you guys are doing this, where's your revenue come from for putting it underground? I mean, is there administration behind it, or you gotta have a revenue source to build this many miles of?
Yeah, so
A
the
pipeline.
larger component of the revenue is that uplift on the ethanol that I mentioned. So we share in that cost with them, or we share in the reward of that. So
Okay.
if they can now sell that ethanol that they're producing for 30 cents more per gallon, then they get 15 cents and we get 15 cents.
Gotcha.
And then there's also a 45Q tax credit that was put into place under the Trump administration that is basically trying to incentivize, companies and entities to try to move into this low carbon world and hit these initiatives that are being set. So it's a credit that is available to anybody that can meet the, objectives of what it's supposed to do. And is every ton of CO2 that you permanently store down hole, it's a $50 tax credit. The project is entirely privately funded. There's no tax money, there's no government money going into the project. It's a $4.5 billion project. And we're trying to raise roughly $1 billion in equity, and then the rest will just be debt financed, like in most major projects. We've got, some public investors such as John Deere is one of the investors in the project. And we are working on, and we just finished it up, I don't have the statistics in front of me, information on tax revenues that we're gonna have to pay. So we're anticipating that we're gonna have to pay tens of millions of dollars per year in taxes in every state. I can get you those figures, I don't have them in front of me right now. I recall some of the South Dakota figures, but it's millions of dollars every year that goes to the counties and the states that we cross in the form of property taxes, the way I think about it. Obviously those property taxes aren't incurred by the landowners, it's by us for paying for the assets that we have in the ground. So we see those dollars going to schools, going to roads, and every state's different, on how that money's dispersed. Like in South Dakota, it goes to a central coffer and they disperse it. I don't know if it's a county by county thing here in Nebraska, but we can get you guys those figures on what the estimated taxes look like in York County, for
That'd be
example.
fine. One more question on more of a local nature. How many miles do you have across the county? Obviously, you're starting out here at the ethanol plant and you're going northwesterly direction and exiting the county up there. Do you know how many miles in your county do you have?
I could send a message real quick. I don't know off the top of my head. I believe it's a 6-inch pipe.
Well, the original map, I think, said 4
Yeah,
that I seen.
we've been updating the hydraulics. I believe it's a 6-inch now, but I can check on that. And then one thing I would note is in the easement, we essentially ran a high side volume case. Currently, we have 8.8 million tons committed, and the pipeline's being designed for 12 million tons. So we want to have some, in the easement, I think we go one nominal pipe size bigger than what we're actually planning to build right now. In the event we get additional commitments and the volumes come up, that it allows us to upsize the pipe from a 6 to an 8 or a 4 to a 6, wherever that may be. So we don't have to come back and put another pipeline in or do anything like that. And, once the pipeline's installed and we've bought the pipe and all that, we've kind of missed that opportunity, but it gives us the chance to, between now and when we order our pipe, if we do get additional commitments from other plants and the pipeline goes up one size, that we can make that change. Just want to make that clear, because if I say it's a 6-inch and the landowner's easement says 8-inch, that's the discrepancy there, is what we're currently planning to build versus if we get commitments from other plants.
So could we get some updated maps on that too? Because like I say,
Yes,
the
sir.
original one I have, it does say 4
Yeah,
on it.
we've been updating our county maps on like a monthly basis, so I can get you the
That'd be great.
latest map, and I'll get your information. I can give you my card as well. if you-
Okay. Where I was going with the mile, I was kind of curious where you're at in easement acquisitions. I mean, obviously in your county, in the past, pipelines haven't been embraced. I assume you're seeing the same thing again. I was curious where you're at on easements.
Well, I know that we just started working on acquisition in other counties outside of the 4 or 5 counties that are just touching Iowa. I know within a month or so after we started acquisition, we were already at like 16 or 17% acquired. So we actually have been seeing some good success in Nebraska. We, again, just started branching out across the whole footprint. We have roughly 313 miles in Nebraska pipe. We were previously working on just maybe 85 or 90 miles, so we branched out, and we'll start to see what that looks like as far as success goes over the next several months.
Okay, did you guys have any more,
I have a
Daniel?
few questions. Are there not other uses for CO2 that, rather than just injecting it into the ground, is there other uses that it could be used for?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are. Some of the ethanol plants that we're tied into, and we have 31 plants committed to the project. I think there's 6 in Nebraska. Is it 6 or 7? 6. Yeah, so there's 4 Green Plains plants. There's the Louis Dreyfus plant in Norfolk, and then Husker Ag. So there are other uses. Some of the plants that we're tied into are using it for food grade or using it for dry ice. But it's a rather small market, and only a fraction of the CO2 that is being captured is being used for those types of other uses. We're not planning to disrupt any of that, and any other uses that the CO2 is currently being used for. We're not touching that. We're only capturing what's actually going to the atmosphere. That's it.
You mentioned the rights of the, like, where you're gonna sequester it. If you don't get the land mass that you need, would Summit use eminent domain to obtain those rights?
Right now, we're seeking voluntary easements. That's our objective, that's our goal, is to seek voluntary easements. As far as in North Dakota, again, that's not my area of expertise, but I believe that there is something called like an amalgamation, where if you've secured the pore space rights of a certain percent, I think it's 60%, that essentially you have the right to move forward. Again, we're well past that, and we're still working 100% on voluntary, and that's our objective across the entire footprint.
If you were to get to that point and you needed some land, would you force the landowner to give you that?
I mean, our opinion is that it doesn't lead to positive or good conversations if we start talking about that. We want to seek 100% voluntary easements. I can tell you that we're doing everything we can to do that. We've implemented, I think, over 1,000 route changes to try to get around people that don't want it. Some of those are cultural related, or environmental related, or construction related. We do have to start maturing our route because it can't constantly be a moving target. We have to start getting it more and more frozen, and that's our objective over the next couple of months. Once we get the survey data in, and we know that if there's certain things that we can't touch or we have to avoid, getting intelligence from, and then that's really why we want to get as much of the survey permission as we can. There's nothing binding with the survey permissions. There's nothing tied to an easement. It's 100% voluntary. It's just foot traffic, just walking across the fields. There's cultural crews looking for artifacts or things like that. There's environmental crews that are looking for wetlands or species habitats and things. And then there's just the civil crews that are looking to make sure there's not a water well or a power pole or something like that. So we need that intelligence, and there's nothing binding there. If there is any damage that's done, we're obligated to pay for that. I think we're about 75% on our survey permissions in Nebraska, so we're seeing good success on that. How much? So Derek's saying it's roughly 19 miles of pipe in York County.
the route, you've mentioned wetlands and whatnot. Are you unable to go through wetlands?
There's certain type of wetlands that we can go through, that we have to do certain mitigations, like neck down our construction footprint, or put timber mats down so that the equipment's driving over mats and not driving on the soil. So there's different types of wetlands, some that we can cross, some that we can't. Forested wetlands, for example, we can't cross those. There's other types of wetlands that we have to neck down in. So it's really dependent. In South Dakota, for example, they have a lot of grassland easements. We can't touch those. So there's different things that we can or can't touch. If there's a cultural site or an archaeological site, or they find, some sort of, fossil or artifact or something like that, then we have to have a certain buffer around that. I think it's 100 feet. So if we find that, then we have to route around that. American burying beetle, I think, is something that's a concern in Nebraska. So we have to go out and do species habitat assessments during certain times of the year. I think it's in June, to go out and to have those habitats assessed by the species habitat people. And they will go out there and they'll see if the areas where there could be a habitat for those endangered, species is there. And if it is, then we have to work around those areas. So there's all those different things that go into what we're working on now.
When, at the presentation earlier, I had kind of asked, and so I'll ask again. When you're planning a route, do you look at public right-of-ways and stay within those as much as you can, or?
We try to follow corridors where we can, because, when you go through there, if they have, so just kind of taking a step back, so we're seeking a 50-foot permanent easement and then a 50-foot temporary easement. And the temporary easement is just needed for construction, and then the temporary easement is needed for, long-term maintenance of the pipeline. We cross a lot of ag fields. As soon as we're done with the construction, essentially the farmer has full use of that from a planning standpoint, from a pasture land standpoint. The only thing you really can't do in the easement is build a permanent structure or put a tree over the pipeline. You can build a road over it. There's very, limited, limitations on what can or can't be done in those easements. But to your point, we try to follow pipeline corridors where we can, because they'll have that 100-foot swath where they cleared trees or did whatever. So we try to be adjacent to existing pipelines where we can. But at the end of the day, we have to get from point A to point B, and there's not always existing infrastructure in the path that we need to take to get back to our system. But we do try to do that and take that into consideration where we can.
And one final question, in Nebraska, and we're in Nebraska, that's what we're gonna care about, I guess.
Yes, sir.
Is eminent domain available to you, and if you have to use it, will you use it?
Well, again, I'm not trying to dance around the question, but we want to see voluntary easements. There is a pathway for eminent domain, is my understanding. I'll just leave it at that.
Yep. That's all I have.
Okay. Kurt, you got anything?
A few questions.
Okay.
So this storage area, and we're on the other end of it, I guess, but I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around it. Is it just this big, huge void, just a lot of feet under the ground? Explain this to me. Was it man-made from pumping oil? Is it just naturally made there?
That's just the natural geology of the ground. Is if you look at the geology in North Dakota, they have many different geological layers, and what we're looking for is hard impermeable cap rock, and then below that there'll be porous, rock that has a lot of porosity, and we're looking for those areas that have very thick layers of that highly permeable, highly porous rock. And so I think it's generally siltstone or sandstone.
We're talking how many feet under the surface?
1 to 2 miles.
Okay. And so it just gets, and there's like this huge void down there that all
It's like
this
a
gets
bounty paper
pumped
towel,
into?
right? Like a
Okay.
bounty paper towel.
So it
when
just
goes-
absorbs all of this gaseous liquid for
So
CO2 then?
we'll have a, a pipe essentially that goes through the ground and it'll drill through that hard impermeable rock and then just inject it subsurface below that into the areas that can accept those voids, Again, I kind of like putting a syringe into a sponge and just injecting the fluid there and it just.
Sounds a whole lot like fracking, don't it?
No, sir, it's not the same.
You're
as
pumping
fracking.
something into the earth.
Well, I mean, if you think about
Fracking
it,
is pumping water, salt water, right, into the earth?
hydraulic fracturing is to break up rock to bring out oil. That's completely different than what we're trying to do. We're not trying to break up the rock, we're trying to store the CO2 downhole. So it's, again, I'm not the expert when it comes to the sequestration. I'm happy to get you in touch with the right people on that, but absolutely, we have no intention of fracking or fracturing. any
Well, I
rock.
know you're not going to fracture, but it's basically pumping something into the earth that's stored there,
Yes, sir.
correct?
That's right. I mean, there's natural gas storage formations all over the U.S.
Too bad we
storage.
can't use them.
What's that?
Too bad we can't use all of these things that are stored in there.
Well, I mean, I don't know what you mean by that, but there's, I know like in Texas, for example, there's natural gas storage because there's downhole storage formations, and they send the natural gas downhole and they bring it back up and they just use it for a storage tank essentially, because natural gas has to be high pressure, and so there's formations for downhole storage for natural gas and other products as well. And even CO2 is being stored right now underground and being used for enhanced oil recovery, and it's actually being used for permanent sequestration as well, but mostly enhanced oil recovery. There's over 5,000 miles of CO2 pipe in the U.S. It's not new technology. There's some of those pipelines that are almost 30 years old. We have to follow the same regulations that all the crude oil and much more hazardous products have to follow. Ethane and ethylene and natural gas and crude oil. We have to follow all those same guidelines, and we're going above and beyond those guidelines everywhere that we can. For example, we're told we have to x-ray 10% of the welds. We're going to x-ray 100% of the welds. We're told that we need to go 3 foot deep as a minimum. We're going 4 foot deep as a minimum. We'll have a very sophisticated leak detection system. So we'll have custody transfer measurement coming in at every single location, and then we'll have measurement going out, and then we'll have measurement up and down the pipe too. So, and then on top of that, we'll have almost 200 block valves on the pipeline, where the valve will come above ground, and then there'll be pressure transmitters and temperature transmitters. And so we'll know exactly what the normal operating conditions need to look like from a pressure standpoint, from a temperature standpoint, from a flow rate standpoint. And if there's any kind of an upset, we can shut those valves automatically and remotely. They're motor operated valves. So we have a lot of those systems in place. We're going to have an integrity management team that is their sole job is to look after the integrity of the pipeline. I mean, that's a federal requirement, but it's also something that we're going to do. I saw I believe his name was Gary, the emergency response gentleman. We're required to have an emergency response plan that essentially says on any spot on the pipeline, if there was any kind of an issue, that we know exactly who we contact, who needs to go on site, and that's a plan that we work with the emergency responders on, and we're starting that outreach now. I mean, even though we're not planning on being in service for more than 2 years, we're starting those conversations now, and we want to work with local first responders and make sure that they have the equipment and materials and everything that they need for any kind of response, and we want to be able to help in that if there are a trailer that needs to be bought or some sort of other equipment. So we are working on those types of things as well.
Okay, Kurt, I think you had some more
Yeah,
questions.
I have some more questions. You talked about it being pressurized from the location of the ethanol plant, correct? Are there going to be pump stations along this route in order to move this product through? And if so, how far do you have these stationed? I'm assuming there's, and on the grade that you have to pump it up.
Yes, sir, that's right.
And we
So,
only have about 5 minutes, and I have another question, so if we could have a kind of a condensed answer. I
yeah,
would
just
appreciate
real
that.
quick, so based on the current volume, we're planning for 6 pump stations on the main line. So relatively few for a 2,000 mile system. And then I think long-term, as we get to 12 million tons, there's, I think 12 or 13, and there's 2 in Nebraska, none of which are in York County.
And then, I would assume as you're getting your easements, you probably kind of have an idea of where you like to see this pipeline go. At some point, we're probably gonna have to, if it gets to it, probably start talking about haul route agreement. As
Yes,
far
sir.
as, we'll have to work with our highway super on that. I assume you have you been using
Yeah,
this
so
other?
that's what Derek and his team will
Okay.
be working on. We plan on getting road use agreements where we need them, or whatever the county requires. We'll be working on drive permits and crossing permits and road use maintenance agreements and, working with the water districts and all those different things. And that's all in Derek's scope and what he's working on.
Okay. I do want to, it's very early in your building process here, or this project, I should say, so I do appreciate you guys coming in when you did to share this with us and the community. I don't know if you've had any sort of open houses or anything like that to share with the folks in the
We
area.
actually did one here in York.
Did you do one?
Just with
Well, that's
February.
right.
2
you did.
weeks ago.
That's right, yeah, we couldn't make it over
We
there.
plan on doing more of those going forward every, few months or so, and we'll do another round of them probably in May in Nebraska and in other counties that we weren't able to reach on the first round. So that's something that and those are all voluntary as well, obviously. So.
Sure, well, and I appreciate that. There's another organization that's got a project plan in York County, and they kind of snuck in the dark of night through the back door trying to get it going, and it's kind of, people probably might be a little more receptive to it if had they actually done it like you guys are doing, and just being out front and open about everything. So appreciate you coming in today.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions? Okay, I know you guys did meet with the public, and I believe that was a daytime meeting. I encourage those to happen again. Maybe an evening one, works a little better for some. I know in our case, it happened to be a meeting day for us, so none of us could be there that day, so. Appreciate you guys coming in. I would tell you too, you'd made a comment early on about if the public had any questions. This wasn't necessarily a public hearing today, so if some of the public does want to talk to you guys, you're more than welcome to answer questions out in the hallway if you would like to for them. That would be great.
Yeah, we'll stick around, and then there's also, there's a website, or an email address, info@summitcarbon.com, and you can send any of your questions to that. It goes to a handful of us on the management side, and we respond to those, and we, if somebody wants a county map, if somebody wants, has questions, we check those every day.
Some of that information you'd get to us along with your contact information then too.
Yes, sir.
That
And
we talked about.
We've got handouts and some other stuff I can send you as well.
That'd be great. All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Lori, do we have time? That was just a quick one, isn't it? So discuss an act on the annual transit certification reviewed and sign off.
Yes, Lori Byers, York County Public Transportation, as of today's hat I'm wearing. This is just we have 2-year agreements, but every year we have to do an annual certification of compliance with things like civil rights and lobbying and labor narrative and all of that. So I have just prepared it for your signatures, and mark each page. There's a multitude of them that need to be signed.
Is that just chairman or is that
Chairman.
chairman? Okay.
Mhm.
Everybody would have had that agreement that was handed or I believe added on to our site, so. Okay, any questions of Lori as she's sitting there?
This is just something we go through and
Yeah,
routine.
it's a routine
Yeah.
thing. It's every year
Yep.
we're required to sign off on.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
Do you need a motion?
Entertain a motion to sign, chairman to
Authorize
sign.
the chairman
Yep.
to sign the annual transit certifications?
Yes.
With NDOT?
Yes,
Second.
thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Holgren.
Yes.
Sykes.
Yes.
Osborne. Rhodes.
Yes.
And Overman.
Yes.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thanks, Lori. Yes, mine, I've got 9:29 on mine. We're close enough, we can do the Board of Equalization, so we will recess as the Board of Commissioner and convene as the Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Rhodes.
Present.
Holgren.
Present.
Osborne. Sykes.
Present.
Overmark.
Present. Open meetings law is posted on the south side of our chambers, on the website, it is on the wall outside of our chambers. Proof of publication was in the News Times the 31st. It was also on our website. We need to review and approve the minutes of our March 22nd Board of Equalization meeting. Should have been emailed to everybody.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Rhodes.
Yes.
Holgren.
Yes.
Sykes.
Yes.
Osborne. Overmark.
Yes. Adopt today's agenda.
Move to approve for today's agenda.
Thank you, Jack.
Second.
Thank you, Kurt. Any discussion? Roll call.
Sykes.
Yes.
Holgren.
Yes.
Rhodes.
Yes.
Osborne. Overmark.
Yes. And we have the tax roll corrections in front of us and wasn't coming today. Or somebody from Ann's office, number 24, number 25. Stoy and Sons is number 24. Looks like it was assessed in error for a new commercial swimming pool. And Grace Children's Home, number 25. Value not taxed property has only partial exemption of 2/3 of land is taxed and are exempt, and she is obviously recommending both tax list corrections.
Move to approve the tax roll corrections as presented. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Kurt.
Second.
Thank you, Daniel. Any other questions? Roll call.
Holgren.
Yes.
Rhodes.
Yes.
Sykes.
Yes.
Osborne. Overmark.
Yes, and we will adjourn as the Board of Equalization. We'll reconvene as the Board of Commissioners, and we had, everybody else left, so you
know how to clear a room?
Yeah. So we will go back up to, sorry.
She should have came earlier.
Yeah. We'll go back up to the general assistance, and we need to, a motion to go in to executive session at 9:31, where no action will be taken.
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you, thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Was it Sykes and Rhodes?
Sykes and Rhodes.
Sykes.
Yes.
Rhodes.
Yes.
Holgren.
Yes.
Osborne. Overmark.
Yes, and Dina Bushnell will be with us.